Thank you, everyone. So today we're going to start another topic. I know it seems like we're jumping all over the place because we are, but this is just giving you a little sampling of many different topics, but they're all connected in such a beautiful way, which you'll see as you spend more time with this. So today we're going to talk about the Buddhist path, the path, right? So it's a famous word in Buddhism, path. We call Buddhism a path. The Dharma is a path. And, we think of a path, right? Like you want to go from here in Florida, you want to go to North Carolina, you want to go to Japan, you need to have a path to get there. So that's what we think of as like a physical path. Whereas when we talk in Buddhism, we're talking about a mental path. This is a path that your mind travels to. And that path has a destination. So that destination is becoming a Buddha. And the path starts wherever we are. But, everything from a frog to a human being, we start off, and then there's this path, and then eventually we become a Buddha. So that's what the path is about. We're traveling from our current state of being, kind of like our baseline consciousness, to a new baseline consciousness. It's an interesting concept. And what's really cool about Buddhism also is, as you travel on this path, there's really no going back, because this path of mind is a path of purification, ultimately, a path of clearing away false ideas and destructive emotions that keep us from our true nature, which is ultimately a Buddha. So it's very interesting. This is a whole topic. It's like, well, if we're already Buddhas, why don't we feel it? Why do we feel like we're just these suffering mortal beings with so much, corruption, especially if we had a religious upbringing, so much sin? Why do we feel like a sinner if you're telling me I'm already a Buddha? That's a very interesting question. There's really hard to answer that. Like, all you have to understand is, like, you're here now. We have these things covering us, and there is, when you get these things that are covering ourselves off, we'll be a Buddha. So it's just an interesting topic. We say that, like, the impurities started with us, but they don't have to stay with us. So this path has 5 paths in it. It's 5 subpaths. And these subpaths have factors. So there's 37 factors that make up this path. And the first path is translated as the path of accumulation, or more literal translation is the path of gathering the required equipment. So think about you going on a long journey, and back then when they spoke this, they didn't have cars, or maybe they've had flying cars, but the idea was that you going on a journey, you got to pack food, you got to have an idea where you're going. So the first path of 5 is called the path of gathering the required equipment. And the first path also has 3 levels. So I know it sounds very complicated, all these levels and terms and lists, but as you start to just familiarize yourself, and that's what we're doing right here. This is Buddhist practice. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. People think like Buddhist practice is like, oh, I went on this mountain for 10 years. No, Buddhist practice is familiarizing. That's Buddhist practice too. It could be, but also familiarizing yourself with all these new terms is part of the purification process. It doesn't feel it, but you'll see more and more. Eventually, you'll start having these breakthroughs, because you could say Buddhism is just a path of breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And these breakthroughs are subjective experiences. Again, we live in this new age world where everybody throws these terms around. I had a breakthrough. And maybe they did. There's breakthroughs. There's like small breakthroughs. There's, I guess, bigger breakthroughs. But what we're talking about here is like major breakthroughs that leave you forever changed. Your baseline level of being is different than it ever will be, or than it ever was, and will not regress. So why these so many complicated words is, you might have heard like the Eskimos have like 10 words for snow. And because of that, they can see snow. And like some cultures don't have a term for blue. So they don't see blue really. They see like greenish color, but they don't really differentiate it as blue. So words are go along with perception. Language goes along with perception. And ultimately, we're trying to move beyond perception. And in doing so, gain ultimate perception. That's kind of what Buddhahood means. But why learning about these different words and definitions is not to just be smart and sound smart. It's when you actually start to go into meditation, whether you're sitting down, whether you're walking, you'll have experiences. And having these words, which the Buddha selected and chose very carefully and gave definitions very carefully, you could say everything the Buddha ever said after he became a Buddha was connected to this path. Everything is to help you along this path. And learning these words, it's almost like when you have a map, right? You know where you are, you know how far you've come, you know what's next, you know what to expect. So that's what this is all about. That's what these 37 factors are about. It's to let you know where you are on the path and what to work on. And everyone's going to have, we're all unique. So it's not saying that everybody's going to have the exact experience, but these are just, indicators that when you have a certain experience, you can look at this map, which I'll actually share with you in a moment, just a quick glimpse at it, and then just giving you some guidance on the path. It's very helpful. And so it's a long path. They say it takes many, many lifetimes, but again, once you're on it, it's an incredible journey. It gives a whole new dimension to your life. You're not just on this path for immediate gratification, or even a path of, creating a lot of wealth and a big family. That's called a worldly path. Nothing wrong with that. But this is a path, a personal path of, again, this has been used for 2,500 years, and people have done this path, meditated on this path, achieved the results from this path, and have written tons and tons and tons of books on this path. So you have a lot of friends, and everybody takes this path is very happy to share with you for free. They're just like this path is amazing. This is like the whole purpose of life, is to take this path. It makes you better in every aspect. So here's what we want to share. So let me quickly share the screen, and I can pull this up. Let's see. So just a quick glimpse at the 37 factors of awakening. This is just, if you search this is a very big topic, so it's easy to find a lot of information on this. And I'll share some meditations, guided meditations. There's hundreds of books on just the first one, which we're going to start today. The 4 foundations of mindfulness. So this is where you start. This is the very first step on the path. It's called the contemplation of body. Then contemplation of feeling, contemplation of mind, and contemplation of mind objects. But just to give you a glimpse, that's the first part. Then over here is the 4 right efforts. And these are so practical, so practical. Again, I always say this is like psychology and breakthrough experiences. So this second part, which we'll eventually get to, is just basically saying that if you want to change a habit, first, you want to cause the non-arising of the unskillful qualities. Then you want to remove the unskillful qualities. Then you want to cause the arising of skillful qualities. And then you want to maintain the skillful qualities. So whether you're learning to take better care of your health or anything, these are the 4 steps you do it. Again, this is the reason why this is so powerful and so efficient is because, again, people have been doing this for 2,500 years. It's not just some person like Jason over here who just like came up with some, oh yeah, try this out, this helps. This is like a long tradition, so it has a lot of strength. And Buddhists are like the most nitpicky people you could imagine. So if there was any flaws in this, they would find it and they would present it. And of course, everyone has different opinions. You could almost say that every one of us has our own spiritual path. That's what's so beautiful about this. Like Buddha came up with this path 2,500 years ago, and in India, and it went to Japan, it went to Korea, Japan, China, Korea, Japan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, up to Tibet, Nepal. So Buddhism has changed, and it's gone through time. It's gone through time of like, 2,500 years up until now. So each teacher, each person, every one of us is going to have these same experiences, but in a different way, and be able to relate it in a different way, in a different language, and then go on to pass that on. And that's why we have all these books, and it's great to get different perspectives. Buddhism is never about like just knowing the truth. It's about going on the path, helping your fellow brothers and sisters, because that's what Buddhism views everyone as. If you realize we're all just these minds that are going on this path, and some paths lead to a lot of suffering, a lot of destruction, but this is the path that the Buddha laid out to achieve our best. So, all right, so I just mentioned that the first part of the first path is called the 4 foundations, translated as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So these 4 are called the mindfulness of body, the mindfulness of feeling, the mindfulness of mind, and the mindfulness of phenomena or objects. So let's talk about mindfulness. Okay, this is like a really popular word right now. It's incredibly important in Buddhism practice. It's like we talk about the jhanas. This is the path to the jhana. So actually, the first part of the first path is really about getting to jhanas. So we've talked about them. So now we're going to start to talk about how to do it. Or one of the most logical step-by-step ways to do it. Last week I mentioned that meditation on love can also help you get to the jhana. So, but this is more part of the systematized approach. So we use the word mindfulness. A lot of people, I hear it, people using it, and people say like, be mindful of your words, or, mindfulness meditation. And what I often think what people are saying is like, be nice. when someone's mean, a spiritual person might be like, well, be mindful. They're kind of saying be nice. That's really like a loose definition. And I always emphasize how important coming to a common language is when we're discussing something. And I really believe that like most of the arguments we have in the world, the wars, everything comes down to this breakdown of language. I say a word and everyone hears it a different way. So there's no common ground on language. And with some things, that's okay. But, some people say, we don't want illegal immigrants in this country, right? And then the other group hears it as, oh, they hate immigrants. They hear it completely. They're saying, no, they don't want illegal immigrants. The other person says, oh, you're racist. You don't want people coming. You're an immigrant. So there's just like this whole thing is nobody is communicating. Or like, he told me he loves me, but he doesn't take out the garbage. So in her definition, love means take out the garbage. But in his mind, I love you means this, this, and this. So these miscommunications are so rampant, and I thought I could save the world by saving language, and I've given up. Now, it's just falling apart and just getting more and more crazy. And you even hear people say things like, well, that's what it means to me. It's like, well, that's not what a word is supposed to be. You're allowed to have your own feelings, but to say that this is what this word means to me, it's like, okay, well, let's get on the same page with what that word means so we could actually have a communication, because a word is just a symbol. A word is just like a computer code. I say this word, like I have a thought in my mind, I say the word, through a language, that code goes into your ears, and then you take that code and it goes back into your mind. So if we're communicating clearly, I say a word and you know exactly what I mean. If there's, and it's never going to be perfect. And only thing that's perfect is like psychic communication through the jhanas. Then I could just show you what I'm thinking without you even having to hear a word. Just like, check this out, and you see it. But when we're using words, there's always going to be imperfections, but Buddha really did the best he could, I think, obviously, to really get the words in. So that's my rant about words, which I do about every week. But when we're talking about things like mindfulness, when we're talking about meditation and the psychology, the words are even more important. Because if you misinterpret something, meditation could be dangerous too. There's negative effects of mindfulness even, right? So you could be mindful of something negative all the time, right? So that's still being mindful. So it's important to have a really clear understanding of the language, not just for communicating with other people, but for our own inner journey, our own inner communication. So the Buddhist definition of mindfulness in English is, again, it's a mental function. So we've been talking about all these mental functions. There's 51 main ones. We mentioned faith. We mentioned shame. We mentioned prajna. So mindfulness is another one of these mental functions that focuses on an object to which there has been previous familiarization and prevents the forgetting of it by its own power. So we have these mental functions. They're just built into our mind, but we have the ability to make them stronger. Just like we go to the gym, the more we practice these mental functions, the stronger they get. So mindfulness especially is one that is so important to cultivate and to familiarize and make it stronger. And the good thing is anything can make it stronger, like pain can make it stronger. It's just paying attention with something and keeping it in mind. So for example, if I mentioned to think about your mother, because we have so much experience with her, it's very easy to bring her to mind. People who lose their memories when they get older, they could still remember their parents, siblings, their first home. So bringing that to mind is mindfulness and keeping it there. So a lot of people translate the word for mindfulness in Sanskrit is called smriti, but it's very popular to call it sati in the Pali language, because they talk a lot about it. It's another conversation, but sati or smriti also has the meaning of memory. But that's a little bit of, again, a bad translation, a limitation of English. It doesn't necessarily mean memory, because it's in Buddhism, remember, it's always the present moment. So it just means to bring something from the past. The past could be 1 second ago, but it means to keep something in the mind. So for example, when you're putting down your keys, or when you go somewhere and you want to remember where you parked, right? That used to be a thing before you could just click the thing and find your car. You used to have to look at some kind of reference point and be like, okay, I'm standing at like the the W for Whole Foods. And you put that memory. You know, they always talk about when you, all these memory exercises, like if you, when you meet people and you're bad, everyone's bad at remembering names, right? They say, when someone tells you their name, repeat it, say it loud. And even more effective is to, if they're like, if they say their name is like, I don't know, like Michael, you know, I don't know, like you look at something they're wearing and you try to associate the word Michael with something they're wearing. And so but all of that is really mindfulness. You're taking, because we have so many things going on in our mind that our mind naturally filters out 95+% of what we're experiencing, you know? But when you start to become aware, when you shut down certain senses, when you close your eyes, for example, you're able to become more aware of other things, like people who lose their vision, famous composers, their hearing gets better. They're able to hear better. So, but the thing to remember is, you can strengthen this power of mindfulness. And if you don't strengthen it, you're going to be distracted all the time. It's going to be very hard to stay focused on one thing. And remember, all these mental functions work together in this beautiful harmony. So prajna works together. The bliss we talked about, all of these things help each other. Basically, all the wholesome things kind of help each other. So when your mind is, so that's why meditation's great, because you bring together so many positive mental factors. All right, so we're trying to be mindful of something, right? So we're going to get into details about what that means right out of the Buddha's mouth. But I want to add another mental factor, which is modern psychologists are calling it, like they're reading this Buddhist Satipatthana, and they're learning a lot about how our minds work, like neurologists and stuff. So it's called meta awareness, or situational awareness is sometimes the translation. So you got to remember, your mind is happening every moment. So you have this moment of experience, and like this moment of experience could be driving. You're taking in sounds and sights. It's all happening in one moment by moment. And you can choose to be mindful of something. You're going into an uncomfortable meeting. You could say, I want to be mindful of being loving. I'm going to be mindful that my boss just lost their child. So I'm going to be mindful of that. So you're purposely keeping something in your mind. So that's mindfulness. But then there's another function called situational awareness or meta awareness. And this is like a watchdog. Again, you already have these superpowers. Just like the computer can do all these things and like check itself, you have it too. So this watchdog, it's on alert, looking for distractions. If you strengthen it, if you employ it, it works hand in hand with mindfulness. So at first, if your meta awareness is not strong, but you want it to be strong, you start practicing meditation, specific meditation. You want to stay focused, but your mind keeps wandering. This meta awareness is the part of your mind which lets you know your mind is wandering. So think of how amazing that is. Your mind, in each moment, not only is your mind producing an experience, if you think about it, like our senses take in all this data, and then our mind turns it into this picture, so to speak, which includes the 5 senses, is in our minds. But not only does it do that, but then it can be mindful of a specific part of that. And then on top of that, it has this meta awareness that can be watching where this mindfulness is going. So there's like 3 layers right there. And there's many more actually, but this is happening every single second. Your mind can do this. And this is why, you know, like, again, when people say Buddhism is a religion, I don't know, but I never seen a religious book teach you how to cultivate multiple levels of your mind at the same time, or at least not directly. This is direct. This is like right out of the Buddha's mouth. So on that note, oh yeah, I was just going to say that. So at first, in the beginning of meta awareness, you're going to get distracted, and then you're going to note it. The meta awareness is going to let you know, and then you get back into mindfulness. But after you master this, you don't even have to practice it. The meta awareness will work automatically. You want to be mindful of something, you just decide to do it, and then like the coyotes are trying to come on the property, the dog is just keeping them away. They don't even get on the property, and you're just sitting there meditating, and the dogs are doing all the work. You don't even have to know they're doing it. It's just happens automatically. And then eventually a Buddha is completely mindful all the time, and completely prajna and completely jhana. It's just, you know what I mean? That's the goal, is to get all these amazing powers to the highest level. So let's, this is the beginning of the famous talk. Like the Buddha would just walk around all over town, all over the different cities, and he became very famous. So people were excited when he came into town, and he'd come with like sometimes 50,000 monks, and he would come down and people would request a teaching. So we have these teachings captured. First, when they think about mindfulness, their mindfulness was so good back then, they were able to memorize all of this without writing it down. So this is all oral tradition. They were there. And that's why every Buddhist teaching starts off with the sentence, "Thus I have heard." So this guy Ananda, he memorized everything the Buddha said for 45 years. And when he was presenting it, and there were people checking it because they also memorized it, but he was the greatest. And he would always start with, "Thus I have heard." And then, so everything was what they personally witnessed, what they heard, memorized, passed it on, and then eventually wrote down. So, so this is the beginning. He said, then the Blessed One, the Buddha, addressed the monks as follows. And this is an old translation from like the 30s, so it's a little bit interesting English, but this is the only way, oh, bhikshus are the monks, for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the destruction of suffering and grief, for reaching the right path, for the attainment of nirvana, namely the 4 arousings of mindfulness. So he translates arousings. So he's saying this is the only path. Like people talk about the spiritual path. He's like, it all starts with this mindfulness. And of course, I said before, it all starts with shame. There's part of that too, because if you can't feel any shame and willingness to admit we need to change, you won't even be interested in this. So you guys, I could tell, are already interested. So you're ready for this. This is like the real start. And he continues, here, bhikshus, a bhikshu lives contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending it and mindful of it, having overcome in this world covetousness, which is like attachment and grief. Okay, so he says that the first thing is contemplating the body in the body, which sounds kind of weird. Clearly comprehending it and mindful of it. So we're bringing that mindfulness and the watchdog into the body. And now this is broken down into a series of meditations. So I can share all of them with you. I'm going to give you a brief overview, but you can sit and listen. There's like YouTube recordings where you could listen to this. There's many books. So the first of the meditation is called meditation of breathing. So the first thing is meditation of breathing. So we've all heard this meditation on the breath, right? Everybody's talking about it. You go to psychologists, therapists, everybody's like, meditate on the breath. This is where, well, I shouldn't say this is where it all started, because people were meditating on the breath before the Buddha, but this is the famous teaching on the meditation of the breath. So he says, "Here, O bhikshus, a bhikshu gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty place, sits down, bends his knees crosswise on his lap, keeps his body erect, and arouses mindfulness in the object of meditation, namely the breath, which is in front of him." In front of him is also translated as in the present moment. So mindful, he breathes in, and mindful, he breathes out. He thinking, I breathe in long, he understands when he breathes in long. Or thinking, I breathe out long, he understands when he's breathing out long. Or thinking short, he understands he's breathing short. So what does that mean? It sounds really weird, right? Well, it's just literally becoming aware of what you're doing. So you can sit down and meditate and your mind can wander, and and you could also do a meditation on love, or we're going to set an intention. We're going to do that. Those are all good. But this is more of a solitary meditation with a specific purpose to really develop that mindfulness. We mentioned that the snap of a finger, the Buddha says, is like 360 moments of consciousness. So that's like probably 500 per second. And that's really fast. But mindfulness is what slows that down. When you're mindful, it almost makes you start to live in slow motion. You're talking to people and you're starting to catch things that nobody else is catching. That's from mindfulness. And it all starts with learning to get that focus. Maybe focus is not the correct word, because that's almost another mental factor, but just that keeping the mind in the center, keeping the mind on what it's doing from step one, breathing in. I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. You could say those words out loud. That's actually how you practice it. When you first start this practice, you just breathe in, breathing out. Or you can do a long breath, breathing out long. So that part of your brain that's like doing this thinking, and the body, which is doing the breathing, and the feeling of the breathing are all together. Now, in the practice, he's saying, sit down and breathe long and say to yourself, I'm breathing long, breathing short. But really, that when the practice is when the rubber hits the road, when you're out, when you're in a intense situation, when you're dancing, be mindful of your breath. Notice, am I breathing short? Am I breathing long? And then it continues, experiencing the whole body, I shall breathe in, thinking, he trains himself. Experiencing the whole body, I shall breathe out. So you're breathing in. As you're breathing in, you're paying attention to the whole feeling of your body as the breath is coming in. And you'll notice, if you do this, especially, I'll give you a little cheat. If you hold your breath at the end a little bit and then exhale slower than you're breathing in, you'll automatically kick in psychoactive hormones that will actually change you into the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's what you can do. But while you're doing that, you pay attention to the whole feeling of your body as you're breathing out. Because you'll notice as you start to do this, you'll start to notice your pulse more. You'll start to feel your blood pumping. So like the more you get mindful, the more sensitive your mindfulness becomes. You can go deeper and notice more and more what's going on in your inner world and regulate yourself. Regulate your immune system. I think a lot of disease comes from lack of mindfulness. People are not paying attention to their body. Their body's trying to tell them something, but because they don't have the mindfulness, they are not aware of what's going on. And yeah, so that's the experiencing the whole body. Then he said, so all of these are separate meditations. So I could send you a recording, or you could record yourself. The next one says, calming the activity of the body, I shall breathe in. So that's kind of what I just said. So the first one, you're just experiencing the whole body. This one, you're deliberately calming your body down, holding your breath, breathing slower. Become mindful. Just pay attention to that change of state. We're always changing states. That's actually the next mindfulness of feeling. Pay attention to your feeling in each moment, because you're always feeling something. Always. They say every one of these moments of consciousness has feeling. But we might have a feeling we don't notice, but we're still feeling. And you can notice that baseline feeling. And the Buddha continues, just as a clever turner or turner's apprentice turning long understands, I turn long, or turning short understands, I turn short. Just so, indeed, O bhikshus, a bhikshu who when breathed long understands, I breathe long. So he's just saying, pay attention, just like someone's, I don't even know what that means. I should have looked that up, what they mean by turning, but probably something in the farm. It's always about like farming, turning over the compost, right? So pay attention to breathing. That's really what this is all about. It's so simple, this exercise, but you got to do it. If you don't do it, you can't just there's no shortcut to this, but this is the shortcut. The shortcut is just do it and you'll get it. So thus he lives contemplating the body in the body internally, or he lives contemplating the body in the body externally, or he lives contemplating the body both internally and externally. He lives contemplating origination in the body, or he lives contemplating dissolution in the body. You get the point. But he says, or indeed, mindfulness is established with the thought, the body exists. Yeah, just think about that. The body exists. We ignore the body. Sometimes we're so unaware of our body to the extent necessary just for knowledge and remembrance. And he lives independent and clings not to the world. So the more you're mindful, the less you're going to be distracted, the less you're going to cling to the world. The less you cling to the world, the happier you're going to be. Because again, this mindfulness is bringing you to the jhanas, the source of a lot of happiness, a lot of joy and pleasure. So just think about that. So part of the reason to be motivated by mindfulness is because it's going to take you to a really happy place, peaceful place, a centered place where you're not taken away by other people and distractions and tragic events. You have strong mindfulness, something really serious happens, people are going to look at you because they're going to know you're the most mindful person in the room. They're going to want to know who's mindful when there's something happens. So that's only the first of many meditations on just the body. So the next one is called clear comprehension of all postures and actions. That's a fancy way of saying just be mindful all the time. So when you're eating food, how much do we lose mindfulness when we're eating? So chew slowly, taste the food, chew it up. They say we should take like 30 bites, 30 chews per food, per bite of food, we should chew 30 times. So we're most of us are not mindful of eating, bending, stretching, in wearing a shoulder cloak. It's so cool. I love reading this stuff because it gives you a glimpse of life 2,500 years ago, and they're basically living exactly like us. There's times when the Buddha's talking about the toys that they're playing with. It's like dolls and it's like games, like games that we play. It's like exactly the same, basically. But it's just funny. The other two robes and the bowl, because the monks have a cloak, they have two robes, they have a bowl. So he's talking to monks, but this applies to all of us. In regard to what is eaten, drunk, chewed, and savored, is a person practicing clear comprehension. In defecating and urinating, so when you're in the bathroom, be mindful of what that feels like. Pay attention to it, right? Every moment is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Why don't we practice mindfulness? Because of pain. We don't like pain. So when something causes us trauma, we purposely become unmindful of things that cause us pain. But mindfulness is also like shining light in the darkness. This is healing. This is really the healing process in a deep way. In walking, in standing, you're online at the grocery store, everywhere you are. You could be mindful in sitting, in sleeping, in waking, in speaking, and in keeping silence. So that's the second one. The third one, this is an interesting one. This one's specifically for the monks, but it's a good, but you could practice this even if you're not a monk. And this is called reflections on the repulsiveness of the body parts. So think about it. Men are most attracted to the female body, pretty much. It's just like, you know, it's been studied, like, you know, there's like neurons and all this kind of stuff. But it's really not the body, because we don't want to like have sex with a corpse. So it has to be alive. That's one criteria. But we got to be careful, because if we get too attached to the body, you know, our partner, every woman is going to age, every man is going to age, the body is going to change. And even still, even if we think this is the most beautiful person in the world, we start to get to know them. You know, there's that saying, like I don't know, there's some guy out there having sex with the most beautiful woman in the world, and he's thinking about other women. He's already bored of her, you know. So there's like, it's just like this dissatisfaction that comes from and our own body, from the body, from getting attached to other bodies and getting attached to our bodies. You know, so like this very primal level, like lustful way of being, the Buddha is telling us is very destructive. So he talks about 32 parts of the body to contemplate. So he says, and further, O bhikshus, a bhikshu reflects on just the body, this body hemmed by the skin and full of manifold impurity from the soles up and from the top of the hair down, thinking, there are in this body hair on the head, hair on the body, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, fibrous threads, veins, nerves, sinews, tendons, bones, marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, pleura, spleen, lungs, contents of stomach, intestines, mesentery, feces, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, solid fat, tars, fat dissolved, saliva, mucus, synovial fluid, urine, and the brain. So if you think about, you know, like if you get really attached to a woman, like lusting, just start breaking it down. This is what the Buddha taught. Think about her. She's got feces inside of her right now. You know, she's got a kidney. Like, you want to have sex with a kidney, you know? So, but when you put it all together and you put a personality, yes, it's a beautiful thing. A human being. So he goes even further. Just as if, O bhikshus, there was a bag having two openings full of grain, differing in kind, namely hill paddy, green gram, cowpea, sesamum, rice, and a man with seeing eyes, having loosened it, should reflect, thinking thus, this is hill paddy, this is green gram, blah, blah. In the same way, O bhikshus, a bhikshu reflects on just this body hemmed by the skin and full of manifold impurity from the soles up to the top of the hair down, thinking, there are in this body hair on the head. So he goes through all those things again. So that's an additional meditation. And that's because it's so gross. That's a great meditation to practice mindfulness. And also, you can, if you don't want to do the gross version of this, there's another version. This is actually a clean version. The clean version is, and maybe even more powerful. Like, this is powerful for fighting lust. But for practicing mindfulness, I'm sure you've come across this meditation before, is to meditate and start from the top of your head or the soles of your feet. Wiggle your toes. You could lay down even. You don't have to be sitting up. But you're going to close your eyes. You're going to spend at least 5 minutes. And you're going to just wiggle your toes. And you're going to feel each toe. Start with the big toe. Just mindful of the big toe. You could say it out loud. I say out loud. I mean, you could say it out loud. But you could also just say it out loud in your head. You could say, okay, big toe. Going down to the toes. Top of, like, soles of my feet. Feel it. Feel the energy, feel the blood flow, whatever is going to bring you mindfulness. Feel the
Can I
top.
jump in there?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so Jason taught me about meditation about, I don't know, 8 years ago. And the first meditation was, I love my toes. And the way that he's saying it, I was laying down. He taught me about belly breath and some breathing. But then he gave me one meditation that was, hi toes, I love you toes. Hi ankles, I love you ankles. And I just went through my whole body. But then I was saying I love you at the same time. I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember that or not, Jason.
Thank you, brother. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all these things. Yeah, that does help. So just yeah, scanning it, sending it love. Yeah, because mindfulness is love. You know, you'll learn that too as you experience it. It really is love, and it does. You will, you know, and also love, but also relaxation. So as you're scanning the body, you could say, relax the toes, relax the feet. Or not even relax. Say, my feet are relaxed. My toes are relaxed. My toes are loved. All right. We got a little bit more time. I think we can get through all of these. And if you have any questions, send them to me. We'll talk more about it. I'll send you the material where you can see all this. The next one, the fourth one, is called Reflections on the Elements, which are in the body: earth, water, fire, and air. Everybody who knows me, this is my favorite thing in the world. And you could take this on many different levels, the elements, but you could take it on a strictly physical level. The Buddha says, a bhikshu reflects on just this body according as it is placed or disposed by way. So even when it's alive or dead, it's the same thing. It's made up of the modes of materiality, thinking thus. There are in this body the mode of solidity, the earth, the mode of cohesion, water, the mode of heat, fire, and the mode of oscillation or movement, air. And if you think about it, like, you know, modern science will tell you, I think 99% of what we're made of is basically three elements: hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and nitrogen. That's like 99% of what we are. I mean, and then if you include space, we're actually mostly space. But the point is, everything in our bodies, everything we fall in love with, everything that we hate about a person or whatever, it's just four elements. It's really just solid parts like bones. It's liquid parts like blood and urine and all that stuff. It's sperm, and then it's heat, right? When we have heat, we have a certain temperature where we maintain, and then when we're making love, we get hotter. When we have exercise, so we have this heat going on, and then we have the pumping of the blood. We have all these processes going on, which is the air, and we also have the air we're breathing. If you look at it like literally like that. So again, so you could do that. You can meditate. So again, you could do the kind of dirty version where you're like, oh, everything is just these four elements. I'm just these four elements, and I'm making, you know. Or you could do the clean version, which is just like, I'm paying attention to myself as a solid being. I am solid. I'm strong. This is more like my type of meditation. Like, I'm the earth element. I'm grounded. I have a foundation. And feel that in your body. The water. I am liquid. I'm blood is my life force is my blood. Blood carries our hormones. So our emotions, things are being transported through our blood. Our heat, you know, our passion. You know, like lizards have to get their heat from the sun, you know, but heat is is like the energy. So, and then the breath, right? The air is like the breath. So the last one, good, perfect timing. These are kind of dirty again. These are called the charnel ground contemplation. So the charnel ground is they didn't bury their dead. They weren't like Christian, Judeo-Christian in India, ancient India. They would cremate the bodies. So so they had these places called charnel grounds where they would bring the bodies and they would burn them. So he says, so there's many of these charnel ground meditations. Because again, these monks are not having sex, right? So they need to get them to control their desire. But these are still useful for us to do as well, to detach that It's okay to love your body, Eli, right? It's okay to make it look good, to make it feel good, to keep it healthy. Of course, all those things are great, but those are all means to continue our journey. You know, if we look good, people are going to take us more serious. If you make everything part of loving others, then everything can be turned into good. That's like alchemy. We'll talk more about that soon. But he says, "Oh, further bhikshus, in whatever way sees a body dead, 1, 2, or 3 days, swollen, blue, and festering, thrown into the charnel ground, he thinks of his own body. Thus, this body of mine too is of the same nature as that body, is going to be like that body, and has not got past the condition of becoming like that body. So as a result, he clings to not in this world. So it's just a way to control us, keep us, from being attached. Because the funny thing about addiction, anyone who's an addict will tell you that you don't even enjoy the drug anymore. At first it's amazing, and then you then you just need to take it for the addiction. So addiction is not like, if you're addicted to something, you don't have control. And if you don't have control, you're not centered. If you're not centered, you're not experiencing pleasure. So, being detached from your body, knowing that, yeah, this body's going to die. This is like an article of clothing. I put this clothing on. I want to take good care of it. But at one point it's not going to be there. And nobody, you can't find a single person who hasn't aged or died. You could die before you age, but notice it says, and has not got past the condition of becoming like that body, implying there is something. You can become something that's not going to age and rot and die. But in order to get that, we have to first understand that this body is not that eternal part of us. I'm not going to say it's our soul, but it's good to kind of know, because a lot of people, they have these Christian ideas. Like I hear this, like, oh, when I die, my body's going to go to heaven. Like, it's kind of weird. It's like, so if you die at 5, you're always 5 years old. Like, what does that mean? Like, So anyway, so that wraps up the meditations on the body. And the mindfulness meditations on the body. So this is all under the category of mindfulness, and we just covered the first of 4 categories. The other ones being feeling, mind, and then phenomena or reality itself. So they get deeper. This is like the official beginning of the Buddhist journey. And isn't it cool? It's not like, oh, in the beginning, you're born with an original sin because someone ate an apple. This is saying, no, this is the beginning. Become mindful of your body. Pay attention to when you're eating. Pay attention. I've even started like meditating and then keeping food near me, because I definitely had that habit of eating really unmindfully. So now I meditate for a long time, and I'll keep the food near me, and then I'll eat the food while I'm still meditating. And it's really helped me slow down a lot and taste the food more and everything, and eat less and digest better. Because not only do you digest better when you're in relaxation mode, they actually call the parasympathetic nervous system rest, repair, and digest. So when you're stressed out and you eat, you're literally not going to digest the food as well, because the blood is going to your hands and feet and not to the stomach. What was I going to say? But also, you're also going to chew slower, and you're going to break the food down more. So it's also going to be helpful for digestion. So it's a really direct connection with mindfulness, and the gut brain are very connected. So thank you very much, everyone.